Mic 4, Mic 3.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay.
Go for it.
Welcome to the Build Guild, a professional, unprofessional podcast for makers.
Professionally unprofessional.
Let's try that again.
You left off the wire.
Welcome to the Build Guild podcast.
You didn't
That's
write
outside.
it down,
Okay.
right?
Welcome to the Build Guild.
He did. There's no why. You cannot
what I said.
spell worth a crap.
I was writing it quickly on an app.
I was writing it quickly
got a
and
master's.
totally incorrectly. Ben Myers, MBA. Sorry, continue.
Not in
It had nothing to do with it.
All right. Welcome to the Build Guild podcast, a professionally unprofessional podcast for makers. I am Scott Foster. I am an excavation contractor, also known as heavy construction,
Yeah.
and I do my work up in Alaska.
Whoa.
So it's been 6 months or so, I think, since we had our last episode.
Yeah.
And we are, if you're watching on YouTube, we're in a totally different place. We're in my new shop. Our last one we did in my new shop, too.
We
I
did.
thought we
so.
did.
It was right, but it was
It was
about
over there.
5-6 months ago.
So
We're
it
on the-
was
we're on
not
the other side.
like this.
No.
Okay.
But now we're kind of in a round table discussion now that I have the room, as opposed to being all aimed at the same camera. So Scott, we go back really far.
Yep,
And-
back in Harding.
Yeah.
Had some mutual friends, played lacrosse.
You're younger
Met
than
through-
me. You're 4
Yeah.
years younger than me. But when I
Yeah,
started
so I-
lacrosse, and then I coached, and then you joined up.
Yeah, we never played together, but
Yeah.
been coached when I started. I didn't start until my junior year.
Oh, really? Is that late?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how we know each other. And you're coming down to visit, and
Yep.
we thought perfect timing to do a podcast all together.
Yep.
And this, I know it's kind of like we have a podcast for makers, and you aren't so much a maker as a hobby, but you are a doer.
Yeah, tour.
A doer of machinery, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool, and I thought that fit in to making things. I mean, your main thing is making roads, right?
Yeah, roads, foundations for houses or commercial sites, large pads for the oil field industry. Anything that has to do with moving earth or dirt or rocks.
Snow, ice.
We do some snow removal, but we like to take advantage of the winter months when the ground's frozen and not work so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing that allows me to get down here and do something like this.
Right. So take us back to the beginning where this started. Like, how did?
Well-
So your company is Foster Construction, and
Yes.
obviously your last name is Foster.
Right.
But take us back to the very inception, I guess.
Okay.
You may not have existed then.
Right.
but-
I guess the inception would be when my grandpa homesteaded in Alaska after World War II.
That's so cool.
So they had the Homestead Act, and you get like 160 acres, and it's free if you improve on the land. And a lot of people were improving on the land with, mules and horses. My grandpa had a dozer to improve on his land. So he branched out after building his hay fields or all the stuff you need to do to improve on your land, and was doing it for other people. And then that kind of turned into a couple of dozers and some trucks, and then my grandpa did that up in Alaska, and then he retired when my dad was still in high school, and my grandpa moved to Arkansas, and my dad graduated high school and then went to college at Harding, and then when he moved back to Alaska after getting married, that's when he started Foster Construction initially, and he started it with my Uncle Jack as partners. But back in 2005, they kind of restructured. They both kind of had different plans for the company. My dad wanted to stay small and work with us kids a lot more, and so my Uncle Jack's company was bigger. They got into doing asphalt, and my dad wanted to stay small, stay local, not have to travel around the state.
Is that still Foster Construction, or is that named something else?
They picked up North Star Paving as their new name, and so for a little bit, Foster Construction didn't exist until my dad and my Uncle Jack split, and then Foster Construction was recreated. It was initially called Foster Construction back in the early 80s when my dad and my uncle partnered.
Yeah.
And then it was SC Foster and Sons on my grandpa's company. But so there's a gap when my grandpa retired before my dad started, and then there's just a a small gap, only on paper really, between when my dad and my uncle split. That Foster Construction didn't technically exist, but everybody around town knew the Fosters and that we were an excavation contractor.
So it was
all that kind of stuff.
what year about that your grandfather decided to homestead
I
on
think
free
it was-
land in Alaska?
My dad was born in Seward, Alaska in 54.
Okay.
And so they didn't homestead until I think 56 or 58 on the other side of the Kenai Peninsula in the Soldotna area.
Wow.
So if this is the Kenai Peninsula, right? Your thumb.
This is the lower part of Alaska.
Am I thinking correctly?
Um,
Or you show me on your hand?
Your hand does not look like Alaska.
For all the
hand thing
listeners,
before.
put your hand out.
Okay,
There you
so
go.
we'll do
Yeah, there you
this.
go.
This was on my view, so I'll try to switch to the camera. This would be the Aleutian chain.
Yeah.
This would be the panhandle where like Ketchikan, Juneau is.
Yeah.
The Kenai Peninsula is kind of right in the south central. I don't know, maybe I can make a little knuckle for the Kenai Peninsula.
Okay.
Cool.
So Seward was on the east side of the peninsula, and there's a mountain range that separates it from where my grandpa homesteaded on the west side of the peninsula, and that's where the Kenai Soldotna area where we do most of our work.
Kenai is most known for like salmon fishing, isn't it?
Yes, the Kenai River is a world-class salmon fishing river. We like to say in Soldotna that we made Kenai famous because the name of the river is the Kenai, but all the sport fishermen come to Soldotna to fish the Kenai River.
Ah,
Got
The
it.
Kenai, the city of, is where the mouth of the Kenai River is.
yeah.
And so that's where all the commercial fishing is. But if you're doing sport fishing, most of the time you're in the Soldotna area fishing for red salmon or king salmon, silver salmon.
So this is like the same latitude as the Aleutians,
Yes.
slightly north.
Slightly north. Well,
Okay.
the Aleutians take up. It's within the range of the southern part of the Aleutians and
Right.
the northern part of
Okay.
the Aleutians.
Got it.
Climate's different.
Is it? Because I was gonna say my grandfather was in the Aleutians
Uh-huh.
in that war, and it was cold.
Yeah, cold. It's a lot windier over
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
We do have a mountain range that kind of protects us, and
Okay.
we have all more trees
Okay,
than the
cool.
Aleutians. A
All
lot of
right.
the Aleutian islands are really bare.
Too
but-
windy
Yeah.
for trees.
Yeah.
Pete, you kind of have a connection to Alaska. Your brother lives there.
Yeah, he lives in Ketchikan.
Uh-huh.
He's a CPA there, and
It's very different than making roads,
Completely.
but yes.
yeah. So my sister-in-law grew up in Ketchikan.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah, so their climate is a little more wet than ours, a little bit warmer. We get a little bit more snow, but any weather that we have, they've experienced, and vice versa.
yeah, I think last year they had over 200 inches of rain. In
Yeah.
Ketchikan.
What?
Yeah, it does
Yes.
rain a lot there. We get quite a bit more sunshine on the western part of the peninsula than the panhandle of Alaska.
Okay.
So take us
then.
into from your dad running things to where you get involved.
Okay, well,
And how would
Yeah.
our listeners say, hey, I want to start a business?
Was that your fault, or did it happen by accident?
I mean, it was
third generation? Never,
job.
never had to get
Yeah,
a job
exactly.
somewhere else, I think.
Yeah, I've never gotten like a. Well, I have gotten a W-2 from one other place. But
What
my
was
other
the other
jobs-
place?
It was in high school. I worked for my girlfriend's dad, who had a plumbing business.
Still
And that was
nepotism.
right around the time when my dad and my uncle split, and so we didn't have a ton of work with the new Foster Construction, and so I spent some time
Yeah.
just digging trenches for
Yeah.
plumbers underground, stuff like that.
One thing that I think of when I think of Alaska is a lot of the population does stuff themselves. They have to figure it out. So, like, how does that work with you? I mean, I know you just built a house recently.
Yeah.
I would go back as well in
Okay.
preference. How big is Soldotna? Like when I picture Soldotna, any
Yeah.
Alaskan town, I'm thinking like 5 igloos and
Yeah. Well, it's
and you're
really-
taking a sled somewhere to get bread 4 hours away.
No, I
so
always joke about that, coming to Central Arkansas for
stereotypical.
Yeah.
school. But
Yeah, well, down here we're all walking around barefoot and
you're riding a
Wife
four-wheeler and
beaters, yeah.
lawnmowers down the road.
exactly. So that's
Yeah.
why I rode a polar bear to school. Living in an igloo. But no, we've got established highways. We're on the road system. You can actually drive to where I am, unlike in Ketchikan. You have to fly there
Yeah.
and take
Yeah.
a boat.
You have a McDonald's locally.
Yeah, we got a McDonald's, Subway, Dairy Queen,
oh,
kind of the standards.
you're good.
Yeah.
The Kenai Soldotna area, they're only about 8 miles apart, the two towns. They call it the Twin Cities, kind of in reference to Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
population is much smaller. This Kenai Soldotna and the people who would come from the surrounding area to buy groceries. It's probably about 65,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah, but and it's significantly spread out too. I mean, it's
Sure.
You know, that's people driving 45 minutes to get to the area, but there's nothing else than 45 minutes to.
But it's not the way I imagine.
Right,
it
it's
would
not the
be,
way most
so.
people would imagine
Yeah.
imagining Alaska. And people might have a vision of Anchorage, which is an actual city, but it's a lot more spread out than that.
Yeah. So then going from you jumping into the business,
Yeah, so
it was always expected.
not necessarily. I mean, it was never pressured on us. It was just always, a job. I started off in the shop with the mechanics, sweeping the floors, cleaning their tools, putting them back, fetching them tools, running on parts.
Yeah.
On our mine sites, at our gravel pits, we scale the trucks coming across to know how much weight of gravel. We measure it in tons. So I'd run the scale shack, print off scale tickets to know who to charge how much for the material they're getting, but very minor stuff. I started running equipment, running a Bobcat, throwing the trash cans that were in the shop and running them over to the dumpster and emptying them out.
Like a little skid loader kind of thing?
Yeah, a little skid loader, wheeled the Bobcat. Back then you drove the machine with your
Yeah.
arms.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
The levers were on your feet.
That's
I was
right.
raising the boom and
Yeah.
dumping the bucket.
Now everything's electronic
Yeah,
with
now
one
everything's
hand.
way better. You drive the whole thing with your left, and you use the right to lift up, dump, scoop, all that kind of stuff. A lot more
I've
user-friendly.
never driven anything, so
It's
I've always wanted
one
to.
of my
It is-
favorite machines.
Looks
though.
cool.
Yeah, it's one of
that
the
and the mini excavator.
the best to learn on and to get like a good foundation on running equipment, and you can actually see the blade you're working with. A lot of stuff
Yeah.
we do, you don't actually see, like a loader or a dozer. You can't actually see what your blade's doing. You just got to kind of know, and it takes a long time before you get proficient in it.
I
Do
would
you guys,
figure.
go ahead.
I would figure like the latest vehicles would have like cameras in the blade or something, like a car. All cars have backup cameras now.
Right.
Like everything's
The new
camera.
equipment does have cameras on the back, but
We're talking like $5 million for an item or something.
no, I mean,
I don't know.
It kind of depends.
What about
Uh,
GPS?
We do have a couple pieces of equipment we have one piece of equipment with GPS, and it doesn't use GPS. It uses a Trimble system, and so once you're set up, like this, the newer excavator we have, it's a Hitachi 350, so it's like a 35-ton excavator, big boy.
Wow.
It's a bucket, about 4 cubic yards, so 2.5, 3 scoops, you get a standard 10-yard dump truck full.
Wow.
But on that newer piece of equipment, once you're like level, you can calibrate the machine and it remembers where you are, and you can set like your bucket right where you want it to go, and you can set that as grade, and then it won't let you penetrate that imaginary
that's
line. So you
cool.
can pull a perfectly straight line.
So if you're
Or-
like doing a home, it would
Uh-huh.
be perfectly
Yeah,
flat
it'd be
no matter
perfectly
what. It will
flat.
never let you go up and down
Yeah.
depending on
Well, you can stay up, but it doesn't let you
Well,
penetrate it. Because
further
sometimes
down.
you get a full scoop and you don't want to stay down. You need to pick up so you can
Yeah.
not overload the bucket or the machine. And so that's kind of like automatic. And that one also, like we also install water main and sewer main for city utilities and storm drain. And so those all need to be the water line doesn't, but the sewer and the storm drain need to be at a certain pitch. And so that new machine, we can set it, okay, here's our grade, and now we're flowing at 1.5%, and then so
Yeah.
it knows that imaginary line at
That's cool.
1.5%. It makes it a lot
How in the
quicker.
world did people do this stuff before
A
the?
lot smarter people than me, very sophisticated equipment.
Are we getting dumber as we go on because we
Well,
don't have to rely
A
on
lot of
math?
the industry is, fortunately, it goes both ways, but we are just starting to get into those automatic equipment. And so I've already done all the work where you have to do it yourself, and you have a guy on the ground telling you how much,
Yeah.
to how high you are, how low you are. And I've done leveling flat for like a shop, or even like a large parking lot where there's grades for draining water. You got to do it all by hand. There are newer people getting into the industry where they have the GPS and the automatics, and they can cut grade anywhere, but if they
No
were
changes.
to wing it without a GPS system installed in there, they really wouldn't be very good.
Yeah.
So I was able to get in and learn how to do things, and now I get to take advantage of the GPS. There are people in the industry that look like they're doing great, know how to do everything, but if you take away their GPS, then they might not
Yeah.
be any good.
So when you're digging,
Uh-huh.
here in Arkansas, the frost line is 12 inches. So
Uh-huh.
our footings have to go 12 inches deep,
Uh-huh.
right? So where are you guys at?
I've seen frost down at 12 feet before.
12.
Yeah, that was in the middle of July, which seems kind of ironic. But
July?
It takes the frost, when it gets really cold in October, the frost isn't very deep. So as it gets further into winter, the frost goes deeper, and then it starts to warm up. But the frozen ground underneath it, like say 8 feet, it doesn't know it's warm up top. It's still sending its cold energy lower. And
Yeah.
so the frost, that's the deepest I've ever seen it. And it was an area that was snow plowed. So the snow actually is a pretty good insulator. It keeps the frost from going deep. And it was a place that was in the shade, and it was driven over a lot. So it was very compacted. And those are the things that contributed to that frost getting so deep. But typically, we don't expect frost. 8 feet is about what we prepare for
Only
on
8
an
feet.
area that is plowed
nuts.
and in the shade.
What's code? Like if you're doing a residential footing, how deep do you have to go?
Well, there isn't necessarily a code, but like 4 feet's the minimum you're going to try anywhere.
It's Alaska. They do what they want.
And there's a lot of I built on silty soils which hold water, and that's you don't normally want to do that because if the silty soils that hold water get cold, they expand, and anything above it, concrete doesn't flex; it just cracks. So if I ever turn the heat off in my house and let it get cold below my foundation, then there's a chance for things to shift. So I just have to keep the heat on in my house, keep it above freezing, but we insulate around it, and it shouldn't really be a problem. And I built on a hill that was basically all silt, which holds moisture. In a lot of, I'd say the majority of building sites, you're able to dig, maybe 3 to 6 feet down, and then you'll get into some soils that actually drain the water out. And so most of our stuff will excavate 4 to 6 feet, and then we'll haul of the soils that hold water, like dirt or topsoil or the silt. We'll excavate that out down to sand or gravel, and then we'll import more sand and gravel and then pour concrete on it. In those places, they can turn the heat off. They don't have to worry about anything because anything that freezes underneath them won't be holding water, so it won't expand in the cold. So that's the majority of construction in my part of Alaska.
That's cool.
We totally skipped over how you jumped in and
Okay,
took
oh,
over.
Yeah, so sweeping floors, picking up after the mechanics, and then it's, hey, the dump site is getting full, so go push it off. So that's about the easiest thing you can do, getting a dozer, just push dirt over the edge to make room for more dirt.
Okay.
And when I first started out, it was not very good. It was very up and down, up and down, up and down. Eventually push them off, but then you do that for a couple of days and you get better at it. And then, or it'll be, we got a truck driver coming in, he needs a load of gravel, jump in the loader and load them up.
Yeah.
So I would do that. And first you're really slow, you're not very good. Your bucket's maybe a third full. And maybe you hit the sideboard on the truck when you're dumping, but you end up getting in it and learning. At least that's the way I did it. And then I really started to learn more when Dad was off on his own because it was just him, a couple employees, and his kids, which was me and my brother and my sisters at the time. That my sisters run all the equipment, the loaders, the excavators, the skid steers.
You have
dozers. I have three sisters.
sisters.
2 of them know how to run everything. My oldest sister, she went to college, ended up graduating with the CPA, and that was before my dad and my uncle separated the company. And so she would do like testing on the gravel to get a sieve analysis or densities. So she did stuff in the industry, but she never really ran their equipment. But the 2 sisters closest to my age, we screen topsoil and they do everything. Drive trucks.
So you were doing all this before you went to college,
Yeah.
and then you said, "Okay, Dad, I'm going."
Yep. Went to college. I got
and you didn't know what you wanted to.
Right.
Well, you had a general idea.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed construction. It was a great summer job. I was able to make more than most people in Arkansas for sure. I could work all summer and I didn't have to have a job when I went to college. I was able to support myself. My parents helped out and paid for tuition, but I was able to pay living expenses and food and stuff.
Yeah.
So what did you get? What was your degree?
I have a bachelor's in business administration with a concentration in management.
Okay.
So as a part owner, the
Makes
management,
sense, yeah.
I probably use some of it, but to be honest, I don't think I'd really be in a different position if I didn't have a degree. I'm sure the degree comes into play and helps me in places that I don't recognize, but
it's hard to
most of the
quantify.
stuff
So like Ben.
we learned.
Yeah, much
Same,
like
same
me.
scenario.
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify how much your business degree is helping
Right.
when everything is a business
Yep.
and what. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you went to college, and every summer you'd go back and work at home,
Go
and it
back
was.
and work.
When was the writing on the wall where it's like, yeah, I'm
Well,
obviously
I
gonna.
think the biggest writing on the wall was after I graduated. I had my degree. I went to the Dallas area just because it has a bigger population density and more work opportunities, and sent out my resume and found some job descriptions I liked. Had some people interested in me, and even though the job sounded good, it didn't pay nearly what I could make running equipment in Alaska. And so tried that because I graduated in December, so there's not a lot going on with
Yeah.
earth construction.
That's an
in
odd
Alaska.
time
Yeah.
to graduate. It's not the normal May.
And so I spent
time.
those first few months in Dallas looking for something, and I was like, nothing's really great. So then when work started to back up in Alaska, I moved back and started doing that, and took some ownership of the company, bought a percentage. and-
Your older brother was already. He's
Well,
your
he-
partner now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we're
back
equal
then,
partners
was
now.
he
No,
in
he
this?
was still. I mean, he was doing similar things. He was working for an electrical contractor on an oil field in like Louisiana and Alabama. Did it in Colorado. Went to California. So we kind of both.
Oh, wow.
By the time, since I'm younger, by the time I graduated and went to work full time and started ownership in the company, that's about the same time that because he had graduated a few years prior, jumped around, and we both kind of went back home, started to have more of a management position in the company, and started, buying up shares and becoming partners.
Yeah.
And so by that point, I mean, you're in. When
Oh, yeah.
ownership stake.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty good gig. We work really hard in the summers. It's nice to have some months off in the winters. I like it. It's a good gig. If people want a 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, it's not going to be excavation in Alaska. Because you got to work 60 or 70 hours a week, but it's just
Wow.
from maybe April you'd start and then go through October, sometimes November. Not much going on December,
Okay.
January, February, March, still frozen.
So, I've always heard that the not necessarily the standard of living, but the cost of living
Higher.
is higher in Alaska compared with practically everywhere else. And
Yes.
same for Hawaii. So,
Yep.
is that true? Is that
Yeah,
why you
it's
were
true.
able
It's
to kind
more
of lured
expensive.
back there and able
Yeah.
to support yourself in college compared
Yeah.
with
'Cause
Arkansas,
I was-
especially when you were?
Yeah, because the standard of living is higher, but the average pay is, I'd say, slightly higher than what the standard of living is. So
Okay.
I was making a pretty high wage, or a significant high wage, working in Alaska and then coming to Arkansas to spend it. I mean, that's one of the highest
Right.
earning to one of the cheapest living.
Right.
So that's what was able to make it to where
Okay.
I didn't have to have a job.
Okay. Understandable, since I grew up in Northwest Arkansas, where back in the 90s in Fayetteville, people from all over started figuring out that was a good place to live, and they could get houses there for a fraction of what they paid for in California or the East
yeah.
Coast or other places, and it just exploded. So Searcy, Arkansas, even more so. I mean, it's a nice town, but the cost of living here is far lower
Yeah,
than a lot of other places.
right.
I don't understand how you go from Searcy, Arkansas, to somewhere where it's wet, like California. You can't go that way. You're going to live like a dirt poor
Right.
person. But if you come the other way, you're
unless
living like
you
a
had a
king in
heck of an
castle.
internship or something, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I remember them telling us graphic design. I was graphic design, and they said if you want to be a graphic designer, you need to go to a big city. You need to go to Dallas or New York, and you need to start now, kill yourself to get that internship that's going to pay off.
Yeah.
And I could never bring myself to care enough. So that did not. And I mean, that's not atypical. No one wanted that enough to make it. I say no one. I'm sure there were some.
Well,
people
you're a
that
true
did.
artist, and you want to do the art that you
See, I
want to
should have
do,
been a
and
fine
you don't
artist,
like to
no.
be. You don't like to do art that other people want you to do.
No, I don't.
That's harder.
It's harder.
I don't want to do work that other people want me to do either. I want
Well,
to do.
there you go.
Yeah.
You and your MBA. Run
Well,
my own
I
business.
just mean making something on in the laser or whatever.
Exactly.
This is what I want to make. I don't want to make.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is this a lifetime
Oh, yeah.
till I'm done?
Yeah, I'll be
You're
doing
full
this until I'm retired.
Or you
which-
sell the company, somebody else
Nah,
buys it from you, and you
not-
don't have to work?
Not likely.
That's
they
not-
can't afford it.
That's not the case.
Yeah, no, it gives a good living. I suppose if somebody was interested to buy it, they'd have to pay me enough that I don't have to work
Yeah.
anymore, which it's probably
course.
not worth that much. So there probably won't be an offer to make me go do something
So
else.
you're just
'cause
gonna
I really
work
enjoy
until
it.
you die and they bury you in the permafrost.
No,
Well, why is it not a goal as an owner
And they
to,
will have the
to
equipment
work
to do
and then
that.
hire people to do the things you're doing when you start out, and then you just collect the check and make
Sure.
sure that
yeah, they'll do
they're
that.
doing the work?
I'd still be the owner. I
Yeah.
don't think I'd sell.
It's hard when your name is attached to,
And it is hard
like
to
your
find
last name
upper
is literally
management to fulfill the role of
what
ownership.
no one will care as much as you will.
Really.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Pete, you were in the same situation because you own
Yeah, I mean, it was
Romano Ray Mason. You still
Super-
do, right?
Yeah, yeah. So super similar. I had to go back in the summers and work as well, but I got paid $1.50 an hour. That was it.
Significantly different.
Well, I got paid more than you, but I did find out when I first started that I was not making minimum wage. And then my dad rightly told me, you're my son. I don't have to pay you minimum wage.
That's
So I
right.
was just like, okay.
Yeah, my parents paid for tuition, and so,
Same, yeah.
but that was the deal. I had to work for $1.50 an hour,
Yeah.
just enough to pay for gas and.
And was that
A
like
little bit of
early
fun.
2000s, late 90s, or when was that?
Yeah, 2000s, early
Yeah.
2000s.
So well below minimum wage.
Yeah, I think minimum wage on my first job was $5.25.
Uh-huh.
I think that was it.
That's what I made when I worked at the library as a student worker, which was the best job I've ever had.
One of the crazy
Not
things
too
Because you
much in
didn't
the
do
library.
anything.
But it was fun.
now
in
that
college.
we all have like our little side gigs, and I look back at our first jobs and how hard we had to work for such little money.
My very first job out of college was at a bank. I made
How'd it go?
$8 an hour, and I was miserable.
You didn't like that?
I had to wear a tie. Number one, I don't wear a tie.
Number one, I don't
Stretchy
wear a
pants when I
tie.
can.
Oh, dear.
No tie, and when there was no work to do, you sat and waited for work to do.
Which
And
is
that
your favorite thing
Ben
ever.
Meyer does not work.
Ben
that
likes to sit and do nothing.
way. I need to be
and get
handed
paid
a
for it.
problem and say, I don't care if it takes you a minute or an hour.
Yeah.
Fix this problem, and then I fix it in an efficient way, or
Well, yeah.
run my route during, exterminating hours or whatever,
Right.
and get home and I'm done. But man, that was for $8 an hour, and now I look at the side gig making twice as much now as passive income, and think, good grief, that was crazy. But I think, like you worked as brooming out the shop or whatever. I know that makes you appreciate the job you have later,
Right.
for sure. But also the people that you work for or work for you now have more respect to you because
Yeah.
you've done every single thing.
Right.
There's some people in past work things that were a boss and they couldn't do the job I was doing under
Uh-huh.
them. And I had zero respect for them to tell me anything because I was
Yeah.
like, okay, here, do my job. How can you tell me to do my job when you've never done it and have
Right.
no clue?
That's one
You're
thing.
disconnected.
Being a, starting from the bottom, like I've been, like now I'm pretty much in the equipment. I don't do a lot of shoveling unless I'm by myself. We have a ground guy that does the shoveling for me, but when it comes time, like we dig, a lot of utilities are underground, gas and power and phone lines and stuff. And a lot of the ground guy's job is to dig far enough to where the operator knows, okay, I can safely take this much
Yeah.
earth off the ground and not hit the power line. So if I have
Right.
a new ground guy and he's digging the wrong way across or digging really slow, I jump out, show him how to dig properly, show him how deep to go, to tell him and be able to tell the operator how deep to go,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
I'm at an age in a place in my life where I will never dig another hole. Absolutely not.
Get an excavator.
You just
you'll
did
enjoy
that.
I
though.
would love to dig. Huh?
Didn't you dig the tunnel for your drain over there?
You're proving me wrong. I did that for Instagram.
Yes, you did, and
That was
it
for the
performed
Instagram view.
fantastically. So, in fact, you will dig a hole.
All right. Well, I guess for views and money,
There
I'll
you
dig
go.
a hole.
Okay.
But if it's personal, no.
No?
I just did landscaping, and Molly and I were thinking, let's do it ourselves. And then I got a quote and thought, I couldn't dig a hole for this much money, like the amount of time. And they brought in the little mini excavator and did it all in a day.
Yep, hydraulics are a huge advantage.
Absolutely. I would love to get a mini excavator.
They're a lot of fun.
I'm thinking too small of tools in my shop. Now that I've pretty much got, the core stuff.
On to the big stuff.
I need to get big machinery, I think. If only you could ship used machinery to me in a cost-effective way.
Not really.
That would be amazing. But if I were to buy a machinery, what would you think be like, hey, this should be your first one that you'd use the most? Mini excavator?
I would probably say one of those farm tractors that has got a front end loader and a backhoe in the back.
Yeah.
It's my least favorite piece of equipment because it's never the right tool for the job, but it is a multi-tool and can do
It's
just about
sort of the
anything.
right tool for every job.
So it's a jack of all trade and a master of none.
Yes.
Type
Yes.
tools.
Like I despise being in them because I would rather be in a front end loader if I'm using the bucket. I'd rather be in an excavator if I'm using the backhoe.
Yeah.
But if you're going to have something that does them both, it's a great farm piece of equipment. I understand why a lot of people have them. I just don't enjoy them.
You can only afford one and get the one. Yeah.
I like to use the most efficient tool for the job.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, these landscapers had a mini excavator, and that I really liked it.
Yeah.
I thought that would be cool. So what do you mainly make? Like it sounds like roads,
Yeah.
roadish stuff to
on
me.
the
So
private-
like,
Yeah, on the
you also
private
are dealing
side,
with private
we
and
do-
government.
Yeah, and commercial. On the private side, we might do 6 to a dozen house sites, which would include, the driveway into the house site, excavating the house site to prepare it for a building, and then also hardly anybody's close enough to be on city water and sewer in Alaska, so we excavate for the septic system and then also install a water line after a well driller comes in and puts in the well.
Okay.
And then after the concrete work's done, we backfill it. And once the site's pretty much done, we make sure there's drainage, proper drainage everywhere. Maybe we'll come in and put topsoil in so they can grow a nice lawn.
Let's say on an
Private
average
size.
house, where if you're going to do all of the house prep and then I guess post stuff
Yeah.
from other people, what is that costing a customer for a house?
Usually about 30,000.
Okay.
It wouldn't get below 20,000 on most.
There's got to be like,
scenarios.
hey, we're bringing all this equipment. I've got to get like
Yeah.
a minimum cost to get
Yeah,
out.
30,000 is good. I mean, if you're not super far from the road, if you don't have an elaborate huge house and a big garage.
Yeah.
But 30,000 is a good average home, close to the road, normal size septic. It's a good plug number, and that would be if you're in decent soils. My house, we built up an area that has a nice view. It's difficult soils to build in. Fortunately, I am able to take care of that.
Yeah.
cheap.
Right.
You'd have to pay more for.
What's
building
profit
soil.
on that? Let's say you're charging 30,000. How much is it like really?
On the private
it's mainly
side,
time, not
10
time and
would
wear.
be low. 15's probably more like we're looking for
Okay.
profit.
So half,
And
essentially.
Maybe up to 20 on a larger house site.
Yeah.
If it's something on the river where it's a doctor that's got 3-car garage and 6-bedroom with an oversized septic
Right.
that goes with it.
Your main cost is man hour or wear and tear on the
Definitely
machine?
wear and tear on the equipment and fuel. Man hours come before fuel. But yeah, the equipment is the biggest cost. The upkeep of it, the replacement parts.
Do you have a mechanic on hand?
Yeah,
like
we've-
always?
We've always had a mechanic on hand, and just in the last year, we've had 2 mechanics on hand. It looks like we're going to have to keep 2 mechanics.
Really?
We'd be
That's good.
overwhelmed if we didn't have 2. We probably need like 1 2/3 of
Yeah.
a mechanic. So we're looking at, we're building a new shop, so we're going to have some extra space. We'll probably look at hiring out our mechanics to fix some other guys' stuff.
Are you buying machines new or used?
Most of ours, we'd go for buying new is super expensive. You can do it, or we've done it a couple of times because the financing from the dealers are usually really, really advantageous. Like
Zero down.
almost,
For,
0%.
forever?
Yeah, I mean, you got to do maybe 20 down and 0% for 5 years.
yeah.
And then and we pay it off by then. But for our size company, the ideal for a new acquisition would be maybe something between 800 hours and 2,500 hours, just to where this new sticker price is off and you're not getting into high mechanic.
So this
Means-
hour is foreign to me because I'm
Yeah,
used
that
to a
would be-
mile per hour.
Yeah.
Or
That would be,
how many miles?
Like hours on the engine or hours
Right.
operating.
Yeah.
So what's like 200,000 miles in a non-Toyota truck is like the end of life for a car.
Right, that would
what
be-
would that be?
I mean, I guess it
Hour-wise,
varies based
depending.
on how well it's been taken care of, but a piece of equipment with 10,000 hours is basically at the end. You're going to
Okay, 10,000.
anticipate quite a bit of mechanic work
Yeah.
and some failures. 10,000 is like, it's retired. I think we have a loader that's that old, and it's not worth much to sell, so we'll park it in a pit that doesn't get used very often. If we need some material out of it, we'll load ourselves and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
So is a lot of your overhead like storing the equipment as well in the wintertime?
Not necessarily. It pretty much all stays outside in the cold and gets snowed on. Most of the overhead comes from the office building itself, and
Yeah.
then we have, my mom works full time in the office, and we have an office manager who works full time as well. And then, yeah, I guess that's about.
What's the size? How many employees do
Biggest-
y'all have?
We got about 12 that stick with us through the winter, and we kind of keep them busy, but they kind of know the deal that they work hard in the summers. They don't get many hours in the winter, but they're fine with it. And then when we ramp up in the summer, if you don't count hired trucks, which are kind of owner operators, we'll have
So you sub
20.
stuff out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with the owner operators on the trucks, it's people that we've worked with quite a bit. They know how we run jobs, and they can jump in the loop with our
Yeah.
circle, our trucks, and do the circle and work with us well. So if you don't count those, maybe 25 employees on the high end, and maybe 6 hired trucks at the most
Yeah.
on like a big site work. Like we did the site work for the Kenaitze Education Center, which is a school for one of the Indian tribes, and that was a very large site work that we had about half a dozen hired trucks as well as 4 of our trucks, and we did X'd out all the dirt soils for it, imported all sand and gravel.
I'm assuming you have a lot of regulations if you're moving earth. Is this correct?
Maybe less than you would think. It's kind of standard practice where we are, because nobody can attempt to build on dirt unless, you could do piling, but then you're not really building on the dirt. Your foundation's down in the ground. You're building above the dirt.
Yeah.
Since it's so standard, I guess the regulation is on where you're extracting the material to import. So on our gravel pits, or what they call the material sites, that's where our regulation comes in.
So you own plots of land
Uh-huh.
that randomly. I don't understand how it works.
Yeah, well,
You have gravel pits.
right, and so
How did you know the gravel was there? How do you make the gravel?
well, the
just
gravel's there
randomly
after you
buy
do the
random
test holes.
holes.
The gravel was made by nature with glaciers and rivers, and washes all the soil that holds moisture. It got washed out because obviously the water grabbed it and washed it away. So it's just leaves behind rocks and sand, which is a good foundation.
Well,
Yeah.
geology.
Right. And you kind of know the general areas. You want to be relatively close to a river or stream to find
Okay.
the gravel, and you always test hole a site before you buy it to sell material from it. Then you got to permit it, and it's got to get approval through the planning commission and all that kind of stuff. And then once you have a conditional land use permit, you can operate and sell gravel out of it. So that would be the higher regulation to move in dirt. When it comes to doing house sites, they let you do what
Okay.
you want.
In a gravel pit, can you just dig to China?
Well,
it might not be China and
most of-
Alaska. What's the other side of the world? You know what I mean? Can you just go? Just
no,
take it
'cause,
all out.
Like most of the material sites we work out of are owned by my dad as a separate, or my mom and dad as a separate company
entity?
and Foster Construction.
Okay.
And then so my brother and I just bought a gravel pit that's also a separate entity from Foster Construction. And in that particular one, we have to stay above the water table by 2 feet. And so, we have, if you do from the top down, we got about 3 feet of overburden to strip off. And then we get to gravel. And then we've got about 12 foot of mineable gravel face. And then 4 feet below that is the start of a water table. And so we have to stay above that.
Okay.
But we did petition to get our conditional land use permit changed to where we can dig into the gravel table, and they approved it. So now we can dig that 4 feet to the water table, and then there's like another 12 feet between the water and where there's still gravel before you get to a hard pan, like clay layer. And then from that, it's another 40 feet to anything. So once you get to that hard pan clay, there's no more usable material. So we'll be able to mine that like 16 feet above water and then 12 feet below water. And we'll mine it. I think we have a 59-acre pit, which basically we're going to mine all of the center, and then the reclamation will, because you export more gravel to job sites usually than you're importing dirt, but you got to import dirt.
Okay,
as
so
well.
you're pulling stuff
You're
out,
pulling stuff out,
in
and
one
stuff
spot,
also
and
comes
you're
back
dumping
in.
trash back in.
Like I was saying earlier,
Trash land.
we got to go clear the dump site. Well, that'd be an area of the pit where you've already mined out, and that's where you're importing the dirt to reclaim it.
Okay,
And
yeah.
once it's reclaimed, it's only good for like a field or an RV park. You can't really put a foundation in it.
Right.
And then, so our plan is to excavate the center, reclaim the center with, some of it's going to be ponds, some of it's going to be fields, and then have house sites around the perimeter that overlook the series of ponds and fields.
Okay. So you'll make that into like a development.
Yeah.
So you kind of make double your money then.
Well,
you take
it takes a very long time to do it. It'll probably be something that my kids are selling.
Oh, okay.
The house sites, because it'll be an operating mine site.
Yeah.
So mine lasts a long time. I would assume it.
This one that we bought, since it is so large, being close to 60 acres, it will last a long time.
Huh.
I mean, maybe we'll get really lucky and sell all the gravel in a decade.
It's just
Very
how much can
unlikely.
you pull out and how quickly?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
knowing the average usage of how much gravel is used in the area,
Yeah.
it'll probably last more like 4 decades.
So I watched a lot of what's the Alaskan show where they're mining for gold?
Yeah.
They're mining
Gold
for Gold Rush. Are you like once you get to the gravel, are you having to like sift out the non-gravel, or like when you hit the gravel area, it's all just gravel?
Yeah, all that gravel that they're working with is all stuff that we can build with. So they're moving so many thousands of yards a day, trying to get I don't know how much. I think a really good pay dirt might have $10
like ounces.
$10 worth of gold in a yard. That would be really good. Well, we sell our gravel for like $6 a yard.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
don't need the gold in it to get the value from it.
Right.
And we do have a wash plant in our pit that separates that. So there's wash sand, and then there's pea gravel, and then there's what we call concrete aggregate, which is rock from like 3/4 to 1 inch. And then there's small sewer rock and large sewer rock. So it separates all the sizes out. And the smallest size is a sand screw that lifts the sand in a wet slurry up and out, and then it goes on a conveyor, it gets stacked. Well, this fall, since the heaviest particles are going to settle in the bottom of the sand screw, I did pull out that material and I sifted it for some gold. And you can see little specks gold in there, but it's not anything that could be.
Is this making
made a
you want to
profit of.
just switch the whole Foster
No,
instruction to gold?
no, not at all. I
mining?
watched those guys on Gold Rush, and they work very, very hard for similar pay. So- and they have more risk, I would say.
More risk,
Yeah.
yeah.
They have more reward, chance of reward.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
They're
Yeah.
pretty steady.
But is that wash plant look very similar? Or semi-similar?
Yeah, it would look similar to somebody who's not in the industry. It would look very similar.
Yeah.
So here's a question. So in Ketchikan, a lot of tourism,
Yep.
you know, so with COVID that happened, they're normally will have like 1.5 million
Right.
tourists every year. You being in, fishing territory,
Yep.
how did that hurt? Did you feel it?
Well,
Or-
we felt the lack of tourists around. We still had quite a bit of Alaskans coming down. I mean, a lot of people from Anchorage, if they want their fish or from the valley north Anchorage, they come down and they fish out of the Kenai River and they take their salmon home. So we still had that traffic, but there's definitely less traffic than normal because the tourists were gone, but not many tourists are buying gravel or building sites. So it was kind of an unknown for us. Like we didn't know where our work was going to come from, how much we were going to have. But it kept coming in, and there's less traffic when you're driving a lot of gravel trucks. It's kind of a nice thing. So it didn't hurt us. It
Yeah.
definitely threw in some unknowns, but our way of life really didn't change.
yeah.
with
You're
COVID.
doing, we talked about houses, but then go to commercial
Yeah.
stuff. Or government roads.
Yeah, so most of the government, that's easier to talk about. So most of our government stuff would be with the borough or like Department of Natural Resources. We've done a state park at the Kasilof River, which is just south of where we do our normal work, but not far away, still to where we can go home every night. But like with the borough, they have all these public access, and a lot of them are really old, and they're good enough to get through in the summer months, and if they're plowed, they're fine in the winter. But in the springtime, when things start to melt, they get soft, and maybe people get stuck, or if the cars don't get stuck, the maintenance operator and a road grader will get stuck. So we do quite a bit of improvements on the borough roads. And that's usually putting down like a road fabric, which is a really high tensile strength fabric that's like 17 feet wide, so you'll overlap them in the center, and then they roll out long. So it gives a nice foundation to put gravel on. So when we're building roads, we don't really worry about the soils underneath it that expand, because it's just gravel on top.
Yeah.
It can expand, and the road comes up a couple of tenths or like 3 inches, and it doesn't really affect anything. So that's how most of our roads are built.
Are you just laying the gravel, or do you come back and pave it too? Or is your uncle coming back and paving?
Yeah, on a road that does get paved with asphalt, they wouldn't just do a fabric overlay. They would dig it out down to something like sand or gravel or hard pan clay or silt, and then build it back up, and then they could pave it. Because most of the roads we build are still gravel roads.
Okay.
Most of Alaskans don't live off of pavement.
Right.
Most
Do
of
you-
us live off of gravel
Do you
roads.
put like fly ash down?
I have heard about that stuff, and my brother is familiar with it from Colorado and California.
Yeah.
They put that fly ash in the roads and stuff, but it's just not a byproduct that we have a lot of up in
Yeah.
Alaska. Probably from the way that they make their cement or whatever.
Would you say percentage-wise roads are paved to not paved? I mean, even in Arkansas,
There's a lot
that's
of
over
gravel
60%.
Well, most
though, I'd
of the
say,
county
is-
roads that I've been on in Arkansas are paved. They maybe don't have a center line stripe or
Yeah.
fog line stripe, but really the only roads in
or
Alaska.
chip sealed.
Yeah.
Even if it's not paved, it's like a chip seal where this rock
Yeah.
kind of
We
gets
Recycled.
hardened.
We've done
Asphalt, yep.
stuff similar. We'll use recycled asphalt, which is just crushed slab asphalt, and then you can put a chip seal on top of that. And some of like the state roads that aren't paved, they'll have something like our recycled asphalt with a chip seal on it, and it's virtually as good as pavement.
Yeah.
But most of the borough roads, any private roads, generally aren't paved at all. So they're just exposed gravel on top.
How does that happen when you're plowing for snow? Wouldn't you just rip that
The
apart?
first time you plow, there's quite a bit of rocks get pushed up in the snowbank, but once the ground freezes, the blade bounces off the top of the
okay.
rocks.
Yeah.
What about like competition? Is there like any native companies that you're in
There
competition
are-
with, or
Most of the native corporations that do similar work are larger, so they might not have the same niche that we do. We
yeah?
are one of the largest excavation contractors that still does like private sites and is able to do like site work big enough for the school like we did the last 2 years. The native corporations, they do have their excavation stuff, but they don't usually go after anything small, and maybe we'll overlap on what we call big stuff and they would consider little stuff.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to really big contracts, like state roads, or like they're doing a highway bypass going around Cooper Landing, which is area road, or well, it's a town that's on the Kenai River, the upper Kenai, and the road kind of follows the river, so it's quite windy. Well, there's this mountain bypass. They're going to do a bunch of rock blasting and take the highway, eliminate most of the curves that follow the river, and just side hill the mountain all the way around
Wow.
the whole town of Cooper Landing. And that's like hundreds of millions of dollars. It's nothing we would consider touching. That would be.
Do you ever get the road blast?
No,
rock blast?
we pretty much stay out of that. We have never.
That's a bummer. That sounds like so much fun. We're gonna blow some stuff up today.
regulations.
Yeah, we'd have to get a whole new division that could handle all the demolition, and
You could start your own YouTube channel just with that.
Just
but we
blasting.
really don't have bedrock in our area for a good 50 miles, and then heading towards. And then when we do get there, it's all a wildlife refuge, so nobody's really building in it.
So
Not
would you
a lot
say
of
since
rock
it's since you're real close to the river, then it's all like you said, silt. So it's like the
it's-
end of the river, so it's all flat. Like for the
Generally
most part?
flat. I mean, we have a decent amount of hills. Each stream kind of makes, like, I'm up on a hill that valley, I guess, was created by the Slycock Creek, which is not a very big creek, maybe 6 feet wide and
Yeah.
3.5 feet deep or something. It is a salmon spawning stream, but stuff like that contours the land to where there's hills, like, a good 60 feet up, and then there's bigger ones, of course, but it's not unusual to have rolling hills in our area. The mountains are farther away. You can see them.
Yeah.
They're pretty to look at, but the mountains aren't where we're doing our construction stuff.
So do you guys have like wells for water, or
Yeah.
do you collect water from somewhere else?
No, since we aren't in bedrock, we're usually able to get down into an aquifer, whether it be in an unconfined aquifer, like just immediately below the ground, or in a confined aquifer, like I was saying in our gravel pit. We have, 16 feet of gravel, and then 12 feet we can mine, and then we hit this hard pan. Well, most of the wells in that area are below that hard pan, and then most of them are actually an artesian well. So
Yeah.
the water pressure down there at about 120 feet is higher, and it will actually blow water out the top of the well. So they have to cap it.
It's cool. So now that you've lived both in Arkansas
Uh-huh.
and Alaska, what is the hardest thing about living in Alaska? Like, if someone was going to move up to Alaska, what
Well,
piece of advice?
I feel like
would
most
you-
people would say they would think I would say the cold,
Yeah.
because it is a very big factor. But I think the daylight is the biggest factor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, wintertime,
Yeah.
dark.
Yeah, dark. I mean,
What time is it
remember-
dark up there right now?
it'll get dark about 4 o'clock.
4 p.m.
Yeah, and the sun doesn't come up till after 10.
Oh my goodness.
So I remember.
Remember that the next time you complain about.
I mean, it does
Arkansas
suck.
winter.
It's like 6 in the morning here, and maybe 5 right now. I think
Yeah.
we passed the darkest time of year, and now
It's
we're
true.
21st is tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
right now we're at the darkest.
We're at the darkest,
Sun
so
comes.
it's gonna
It's
change.
light out at 10:30. It's dark by 4:15,
But once
4:20.
once it gets to like the 22nd, you guys gain probably
Start
like
gaining.
5.
Yeah, it starts at like
minutes.
5 minutes a day. At the peak, it's like 9 minutes a day you gain.
Wow, that's significant.
maybe even 10 minutes
yeah.
a day of daylight.
Wow.
And then in the summertime,
It never goes down.
yeah, it doesn't really go down. We're far enough south that it does go down, but it only goes down so far below the horizon, so the sky's still kind of lit up.
Oh,
on
wow.
on the longest.
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
What about northern lights? You get a good view
Uh-huh.
of northern lights?
Yeah, there's definitely, the farther north you go, the better you see it. But when I was flying down here, leaving out of Anchorage, was looking north, and there's northern lights. We're
That's so cool.
dancing around out of the airplane window.
And flying from Alaska to here is a how many hour flight?
Well, this time I went to Chicago from Anchorage. That was 5.5 hours. And then from Chicago to Nashville, it was only about an hour and 50 minutes.
And driving from Alaska to Arkansas to go
Yeah.
to college was how many days?
Well, I never drove down, but I've driven up 3 times. And it's about 70, the fastest I've ever done it was 72 hours of road time. So that's not counting stopping the fuel.
When
or
you've
stopping
talked to
sleep.
me though,
It's like a week of
Takes about-
driving.
Yeah, a week is the standard.
Oh my
If you're
gosh.
not seeing the sights and you're waking up and
Yeah.
driving and going to sleep, you can do it in 5-6 days.
when you talk to me, the drive from
Wow.
I don't know where the exit point in Oregon. I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's a spot
The-
in Washington that you can cross, the Cassiar Highway.
Washington is north of Oregon.
Sorry,
A
Washington.
little bit easier of a drive.
I don't
Kinda
look at that
stays-
side of the
Oregon is
United
not on the
States.
Canadian border.
Washington.
Yeah, or you can go up through Montana
Yeah.
or the Dakotas.
But
even.
you were telling me that going through that on the Canadian highway there is that one? US 1?
There's several ways to get into Canada from the lower 48, but there's only one road that gets into Alaska.
Yeah. And it's US 1, is it not?
I don't think so, but it
Oh.
could be.
Whatever
I don't know,
road
it's
it was,
Canadian
you were
something.
saying like, yeah, there's like one gas station every X amount of miles. And if
Right.
you don't stop there, you're screwed.
Yeah, especially if the next one is closed. They're not open 24
Yeah.
hours.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've
There's nothingness.
I've done it before where, you fill up at one gas station, you get to the next one, and they're closed, and you're not going to make the one after that. So I guess this is where we're sleeping tonight until they wake up in the morning.
Really?
Wow.
Then you can fuel up and make it to the one after that.
That's
In the
crazy.
summertime, they keep more hours because there is a lot of RV traffic, but
Yeah.
I've driven it usually in the spring while everything's still frozen. It's
So no
cold.
Teslas making that drive.
Not at all.
We're a little
Unless
bit
they're
off
towing
on
the generator.
they don't degenerate. Exactly. Well, we're gonna sum it up kind of with what you've done there because we're almost like 50 minutes in.
Okay.
So we're gonna kind of catch up with the rest of us here on what's been going on in our lives for the last few months. Brian, tell us about your making things you're doing in the last several months. Any projects you've been working on? Or?
just this and that on the laser.
Little bits of this and that.
Yeah,
is what
little
I've
bits
seen.
of this and that. Very incoherent as usual.
We have some awesome swords.
Yes,
For
I did do that.
birthdays.
That was
These
a
are
project
fantastic.
for Birthday Apocalypse. All my kids have birthdays in November, and my birthday is in November, so they wanted fairy tale-esque motifs. So I laser cut a dozen swords. The laser was out of focus. It did not cut all the way through. Took them all home and cut them on the bandsaw again. That was fun. And I did laser cut acrylic fairy wands.
Yeah.
Also, I made those.
We did find out we can cut 3/4 inch.
Oh, absolutely. And that, we cranked the
pine.
Mira 9 through 3/4 inch craft pine from Lowe's, and I was
In one
elated.
pass.
Yes, in one pass.
It's fantastic.
So we did push the limits of depth of cut on the Mira, and I am very happy to know because I'm gonna use that.
And
Add
that's
that
with
to
the
list.
standard lens and standard air.
That's right. That wasn't even with the, what is
We
it,
have a
4
4 inch lens that
inch?
should be able to cut through thicker material, and I have a
So-
compressor that should be able to cut through
So,
thicker material.
holy
So
smokes.
possibly an inch thick.
I love
After
that
all
machine.
those modifications.
So I have experimented with lots of different things, pallet wood, craft wood on the laser. Have I uploaded any of those files to Etsy? I have not. My Etsy shop continues to do on average as it has done before, so I need to pay more attention to that. I've done some paintings in the
Yeah.
last few months.
You
I've
also have a lot of
actually-
blasters on your Etsy shop.
just two.
Well,
just-
it seems like
just
you've
two
sold
files.
a decent amount
Well,
of
it's
blasters.
the actual blaster prints are what people buy most of the
Yeah.
time. Yes, as usual.
These are-
But I started painting more, and I've been looking at a lot of abstract artists, and I'm getting really inspired. So I've bought a ton of big canvases and paint, and I'm gonna paint some.
fling paint.
No, it won't. It will be abstract, but I will not be slinging
Shapes
paint.
and circles.
No, I'm not there.
So,
No, it won't be like, Kandinsky stuff either, like geometric
yes.
type.
I'm thinking about the Parks and Rec episode.
Uh-oh.
Which I don't know if you.
I've
guys
seen like
have
3 episodes.
remembered
I'm
enough.
sorry.
That's too bad. It's one of my favorite
I
shows.
know. I'll get to
Where
it.
the art, each department is making their own artwork that symbolizes like the city, and I can't remember his name. The comedian. Well, there's a bunch of comedians.
Aziz.
His
Yeah. Tom.
character, Tom.
How do I know this and you
Yeah,
don't?
I
And
can't
it's your
remember his
favorite
name.
show, and I
Tom.
know. Why do I know this?
Tom? Tom pays somebody in an art school to make him art, and it's abstract, and he's like, "This is crap. What is this?" And then he takes it home and he falls in love with the shapes, and he's like, "I just see the shapes," and he starts crying to the shapes, and that's what I imagine.
It's totally
When you
what's going to
tell me-
happen. Yes.
We'll have to
I'm gonna bring it in
recreate
here, and you're going to cry over it.
A YouTube of the shapes.
To touch your spirit and soul. Yeah.
So random little things. Anything big on the horizon?
Um,
Anything you can think of?
I'm going to cut some foam on the laser as well.
Go fast. Have cut foam and started a fire before.
It's like EVA foam.
Yes, go fast. I've
Have we
cut
tried
foam.
that? Have you?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
EVA foam cuts great.
Oh, great. But go fast.
Yes,
Okay.
fast.
Duly noted.
You don't want to melt it. If you linger too long, you'll. Oh, much like when we were trying to figure out the door. What is it? The door right there on the floor. What?
Floor mats.
Floor mat. The door mat.
Welcome mats.
Welcome mat.
Yeah.
The first one cut
Oh, right,
great, and
yeah,
then
you
I didn't
nearly
write
set
down the
one on
settings,
fire.
and the next one I was using the same settings, but I forgot about the liner rule.
Fire.
I made it like finer than a hair, and it was just cutting over itself and causing a fire every
That's
time.
the
So,
old lines per inch.
Yes.
Yes.
Pete, give us an update on Rowdy Roman.
Yeah, so I'm just like 3D printing. I have sold a lot
Yeah, you
this
have.
year. It's pretty.
You
it's
quit
been
your job
Amazing. I
last
quit my
year,
job.
and
yeah.
no regrets.
No.
Should've done it
Zero. Zero regrets.
You can get that tattoo right here.
No regrets.
No regrets. No regrets.
Yeah, so I guess the big thing, like in the back of my mind, that comes with the 3D printing is most of my customers are Onefinity. Awesome, great, but as a business, I wanted to diversify, and it just has come to me through connections that now it looks like I'm getting a contract with a medical device company and 3D printing stuff for them. So that could be huge.
Yes, it could.
Because from what I understand is they already have like potentially 20,000 patients. So that'd be a ton.
You're gonna need another printer.
You're gonna need another
farm.
shop
I know.
to have
I
more
know.
printers.
Well, I just added, I'm up to 12 Prusas and 1 artillery.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm glad it's winter because
Is it hot in there?
it is toasty.
Little toasty?
And his shop, what is your shop? How big
15 and a half by 11 and a half.
Oh my
is it?
god.
And these things
So
are getting
wall-to-wall
like,
printers.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
It's nuts.
And they're getting so hot in there. It's just cooking the whole room.
I think I could fit, like, as far as amperage, I can fit 2 more Prusas. And
Before
then that
you
would
set
be
the building
max
on
out.
fire.
Well, I have 50 amps going in. And so
That's- okay.
50 amps and
I don't
then
know what
my,
that means, but it sounds good.
Well, my house is 100 amps. Most houses are 200 amps now.
Yeah, that's
So
100 amp
you
is pretty
have
small.
50% of your house power going to that
Yes.
shed, which is
If we turned everything on, it would not be good.
gotcha. You're at that point.
Yeah. So I guess horizon wise, as Rowdy Roman continues to grow, is we're going to have to build a garage. And we'll have an upstairs and I'll have a new shop.
I've been hearing this for a year.
I know. I know.
So mark this down.
Yes. It's got to
A
happen.
year from now.
If I want to grow, it's
December
gotta
20th,
Yeah.
2021.
It's hard because I've
Pete says he needs a
operated
new garage.
debt free up until this point. But to build a garage, I would have to go into debt.
Well, here's a question for Scott.
Uh-huh.
You are on the small end of what you're doing. Well, small relatively in what you do.
Yeah, we're the,
And you guys say
we're the
you're
big private guys, we're the small
right.
public contract guys.
Do you want to go bigger? Like Pete's stuck where he is, kind of. Sort of. If you want to grow, you got to pay.
Yeah.
What's-
I would say we
what's-
have room to grow, especially we've got this new shop we're building. But I don't want it to be quickly,
Yeah.
I
Stay
could see
under
us
50
having-
employees.
Yeah, I can see us going from our, we've got a good core 12 employees. If we had a good core 25 employees, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Maybe take us 3-4 years to get there, and then when our peak is maybe 60 employees for the summertime busy season, that'd be great. Not looking to get hundreds of employees like my dad and my Uncle Jack had at one point.
Well, they had that. Wow.
Yeah, and they were all over the state.
That was
Where,
very big.
and they were a union contractor, which I don't plan on being
Wow.
union. Not because I don't like unions, but it just brings in
A lot
a
of
lot
other
of people
things.
that you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is your tip for Pete? Go into debt and buy a shop. So
And
you
not
can,
all debt is bad.
that's what I've
mean,
heard.
You got to make sure it pencils out, but
Yeah.
you're going to get there quicker by accepting some debt than by not.
And you may be missing out on other
There
things
could
because
be opportunity cost missed.
there's the risk. I mean, that's the risk, though.
Yeah. That's with any business is
Yeah.
weighing the risk.
And right
No
now,
risk
the
and no
risk is
biscuit.
not worth it for you.
Well, you got to realize I have a wife. She has an opinion too.
Oh,
So-
you're asking for the opinion. That's your problem. I just do and say, oh, by the way.
Asking for forgiveness is easier.
You don't
than
need to ask for it.
apologizing.
Just, oh, by the way, this is what I did. There's no forgiveness asked. My wife will never listen to this, so it doesn't matter. 21 episodes, 0 episodes listened to.
Did she not listen to any of
No,
it? Okay.
no way. She could care less.
Yeah.
So medical device, that's kind of your
Yeah, that's
your deal.
That's the big thing. I'm
Yeah,
really
well, if-
happy to
If that
diversify.
happens, then I guess you'll have a really good reason to
Yeah. Yeah.
build
I mean,
mooring and
as
take
far
that
I've signed
chance.
a DNA, so
I thought- yeah, I thought it
non-disclosure.
happened.
NDA,
Not a DNA.
not a DNA.
They take your DNA. I thought it happened though. Or
Well,
it's still like we'll,
I think they're
we'll buy a
waiting
batch
on-
and see how it goes, or
I submitted the quote. I signed the NDA.
Okay.
It's just I think it's possibly waiting to next year.
okay.
So we're at that
year
stage.
end.
Sounds like you'd
Yeah.
have a contract coming up, and with contracts, it's less
Correct.
risk and more
True. That's true. Ooh, Scott.
yeah.
I think
It's easier
Scott's
to get
feeling you to.
out in
Yeah.
some
Scott's,
debt. if
he's
you have a
like, well,
contract.
I'm here. I'm
And
gonna
that's
plow
one.
that.
That's one thing I'm
land
waiting
for
on
you.
is to see exactly how this pans out.
Yeah.
So
And another thing we need to talk about that finally got revealed this last month was the big Prusa 3D printer.
yeah. Yeah,
And you
yeah.
pre-ordered.
I totally pre-ordered that thing.
Yes.
And so when I was looking at it and I see the price tag and I realize you can have 5 print heads and print in 5 different colors if you want
Or material.
or material. Most like what I see in 3D printing is the smaller the item, the more you can crank out, and the more it's easier to make profit.
That's why you've got how many minis?
Yeah, I have 6 minis and 6 MK3Ss.
You got 6 of each. Okay.
So if I'm printing on on the XL, I can fit a bunch of small stuff on there, and which means less my time switching printers and stuff. But I think I'm going to go with the 5 print heads, and it's totally for fun.
So Scott, you don't know cost of anything.
Should I
at
build
all.
a garage? I don't know, but I am buying that printer with all the print heads.
That's right.
So like the normal Prusa, well, you can look right over here. I have the littler one that's orange. That one's $400. The one on the left, though, that's orange that was printing something.
Yeah.
That's about $800.
Yeah.
And this new one that came out is bigger
With 5
with
print
different
heads.
print heads, so you can print.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to imagine multiple heads going because most of these there's just one print head.
It's one, but then when it changes color, it comes back and it like pops off one head and it moves to the other one and pulls it back out and starts
Yeah.
printing. And
Okay, so there's still
one
one thing.
still
moving
one
around.
moving.
There's five
Yeah, it could just
simultaneous.
change on a whim.
Okay, I was trying to imagine 5 heads
Yeah,
moving around.
that would be crazy.
They're gonna be hitting each other.
But it's got so that with 5 heads, it's $3,500. Wow.
Yeah.
So significantly larger investment.
For sure. With 1 print head, it's $2,500.
Still significantly
still
larger.
Significant.
Yeah.
And
But-
what's the size of this XL?
Yeah, I think
It's still not
three-
super
I think
XL
it's-
either.
Yeah,
it's
I think it's
350
three-
by 350
Yeah,
by
so about like
350, I
that.
think.
That's
So
millimeters.
Ender
No,
5.
Yeah, millimeters.
it's
Type
smaller.
size.
No, it's the same size as that.
Same
my
size.
my one up there on the very
Ender
top right.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is bigger, but it is much more expensive. And
But-
that Ender 5 is less than $1,000.
But we know the Prusas are dependable. We've used them for,
sure.
a long, long time. They're making some pretty crazy claims on this one, like no bed leveling, no
Yeah.
Z adjustment,
Yep.
all automatic and improved. And I'm a little bit skeptical, but I mean, I would love for it all to be true. And I guess we're going to find out.
You know, I made the jump to Prusa's just because it's the most hands-off machine that I have
There you
dealt
go.
with.
Agreed.
Time value of money.
And when I started it, I had another job.
Yeah.
So I could only put so much time into it. So I just invested in that. And now all I have to do is carry one type of machine parts or one brand of machine
Yeah.
parts.
And you got rid of, I mean, the only other thing that's come close is the FL Sun Deltas, right? And you had
You had a
several
bunch
of
of
those,
those.
and
Yeah,
I still
have
got
two.
one.
I still
Okay,
have
you
2 of
still
those, but I never use them.
Okay. And they're good.
Yeah.
We've run those for
Yeah,
months
yeah.
with no
You
issues.
just you gotta, if you're gonna print in like PETG, you gotta really ramp up the temperature
Right.
more than say the Prusa.
Right.
So, but once you get all that dialed in, yeah, it prints great
Yeah.
and fast.
Still not as good as the Prusa. Not quite there.
Yeah, no, not quite there. But what about you, Ben?
Yeah, Ben.
Most recently, literally finished this morning, was redo my dining room table.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That was
yeah.
just for me, but now that we've moved into this new house and it had an overwhelming amount of wood, which isn't so much now because all the wood got painted white, but the floor was wood, and the dining room table was one of the first things I ever made, like for real, I guess. And of course, that was for us, not for anybody else, but I made a lot of mistakes or things I didn't think about when you make stuff. So, like, for instance, if you're making a dining room table and you listen to this, like the undersides of tables, I rounded over the top, but I didn't do the underside. And when and it had 2 benches, so the benches, like when your leg comes up off a bench and it accidentally rubs that corner, like it rips into you. So I rounded over all of those.
You rounded over every edge.
I rounded over a lot of edges, but also I bought pre-made legs. I thought,
Yeah.
oh no, Ben, you have a lathe. Well, I can't make. I'm not good enough to make
identical.
four identical lathes. There's no way.
Yeah.
So I bought those, and the benches weren't rounded over; they were points. So when you shove that bench in, and inevitably when you have kids under 10, you're just gonna shove it wherever. That corner goes right into
Stud.
the rounded pine, which
Yeah.
is soft. That was the legs I could afford, and they had dents all in them and whatever.
And you made all the rest of it out of oak, right?
Yeah.
So oak into pine.
Oak into pine, yeah, yeah. So I changed that up. I rounded over everything. I rounded all the corners, and
Looks
I
great
painted.
now.
I painted the apron and legs all white,
Yeah.
and then I stained the top darker. And then now I have the Fuji sprayer,
Yeah.
and thanks to Furniture by Pete for giving me tips about what I should spray because he makes tables all day long. And I use whatever I used last time was a bad clear, and I didn't put it on well, so it was kind of gummy or the more use you did, it got gummier.
Yeah, I remember
so like
that.
the kitchen table always becomes like the do everything on it, and the kids were like working in glitter, so they're like there's glitter in the table and stuff.
Stuck there and stayed.
So that, I mean, that's one thing that's fresh off my mind because I literally just finished it now, and I had my laser tube die or go bad, so I've learned how to change out my laser tube, and that was an interesting thing I was afraid to do, but it was super simple to change. And Eon Laser FaceTimed me during the whole thing,
that's
of
cool.
showing how to do it. I mean, the customer service is second to none.
Yes.
Really. I put that video up on YouTube just to show other people how it was. I still haven't finished the shop series because I just haven't had the time and the desire to really focus on YouTube, and I really need to. I think the Christmas break has been making me think I could just bang these things out. I have them all filmed and everything, but it's just editing is my least favorite thing to do on YouTube. What else have I gotten in here? I got a vacuum former. That's probably a YouTube video that's coming out soon. It's a little teeny. It's back in the corner there. But like, you put in this plastic and you put in say if I wanted to make the cell phone, I could do something to the cell phone. I put the cell phone down and it heats up this plastic and I push it down and it sucks. It vacuums all of it out and it forms this plastic.
So you can make like an injection mold.
An
for the
injection,
same
yeah,
size.
and then you can go backwards and put something inside there. I'm thinking that Pete and Brian need to use it for their packaging.
Yes.
Like when he sells a blaster, it is
Yeah,
super
I need to
professional.
print one, bring it here, like you said. And
Give it a try.
Yeah.
So that video will probably be coming out sometime in 2021 or we're in 22 because I really want to get more into that because that's something I haven't really delved into. I thought it was pretty cool. I did order a Prusa like the minute they came out, so I'll probably get mine before you. I only did one head, not because I didn't want to spend another $1,000, but the more you talk about it, the more I probably will get 5 heads. Do an update. I can't be behind you in technology. That's not allowed.
I just want to print in water soluble support.
That's very exciting.
That'd be so cool.
So when you print stuff and it needs a support, usually it's the same material and you have to
you
like
gotta
peel
grind
it off
cut
and it looks. But they make this water soluble to where like you take it off and you just drop it in water and those supports just kind of melt away. Which is again time value of money, which is pretty cool. I did get the upgraded Prusa SL1 resin printer. I did the updated thing. I've printed one thing, it didn't turn out right, and I haven't touched it. So I
Sounds about right for the resin printing.
Just don't make the money like you do. That's not where my money is. I did redo all of my files on Etsy for the wasteboard, like the Myers Woodshop wasteboard. That was a big one. I sold them all individually, and I didn't do any of the Vectric files, and a lot of people do that. So I finally just said, you know what? I really need to make a mega pack to sell it all in one shot with Vectric and stuff. So I did do that. So if you're listening and you're interested in that, that's all up. New sizes for I did it for the 150 Journeyman, so like bigger sizes than I had before. So I have done a lot more Etsy stuff. There's a lot more things on Etsy.
Good for you.
Well, that's kind of what I've been
Inspiration.
doing. Yeah. And this and that. I did come out with like the Cersei Harding in our local town ornaments. I learned I see Brian on the iPad all the time drawing stuff, and I really have a desire to do it. Yet I'm
And
not
you're
an
doing
artist
it,
the way you
but
are.
you got it done.
But I did get it done. It was more like a focus on can I do this thing?
Yeah.
So I got a picture of these places. I traced them out. I put them in a Lightburn, and then they came out to ornaments. And no one else has anything like that. So
I'm loving Lightburn more and more.
that was cool. Lightburn is getting better and better. There's some cool stuff in the
time.
pipeline I can't discuss
Oh,
yet.
you know that much about
But
it? Okay.
yes.
Well, all I
am.
know is sometimes I'm just struggling in Illustrator to get SVGs optimized to cut on that laser, and then I fight, and Ben walks over and says, "Oh, look, you can do that in Lightburn in 3 seconds," and it does.
It's really
and it's awesome.
It's my favorite program.
So,
But,
Lightburn.
more. It's controlling more things in the future. I mean, I'll say that, and hopefully not get in trouble. But
Awesome.
I'm excited because it controls some stuff I have.
I
in the
approve.
future.
Yeah.
And I've already beta tested it, and it works really well, and I'm super happy. So
Sweet.
yeah, cool stuff. So that's basically it for me.
Cool.
Going on. Yeah. Scott, we can't find you online anywhere like most people can
No,
go because you're
not
not
typically.
online.
Can't find you
not
anywhere but
care.
Alaska.
You're in Alaska. You
That's the
have no
point.
Instagram. You don't look
I
at
have one,
Facebook.
haven't been on it in years.
Yeah, on Facebook.
It's been deactivated.
So I'd say you can find Scott at all these places, but you can't.
No.
You have to go to Soldotna, Alaska, and hire him to
Yes.
do some roads.
Yep.
If you happen to
House
be in
sign.
Alaska, look up Foster Construction if you need construction.
Well, I
stuff
know
done.
I've sold some Onefinity accessories to Alaska, around Anchorage and whatnot.
Well, I could see that being very handy for a place that's very hard to get certain
Yeah, to make your
Yeah,
own
to
tools.
make your own stuff.
supplies
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be
Self-sufficiency is crazy.
more 3D printing per capita than
Yeah.
most places.
I still cannot believe what I can do in my shop on my own now. Like we were checking out my fiber laser
right.
when you first came, shooting your logo on a stuff,
Right.
and you asked me how does this work, and I don't have an answer. I understand most of the other machines, but we started watching a video that had
Yeah.
a lot
Very
of chemistry.
Quite long.
Didn't really understand it. It's just
Followed about half of it.
yeah. For whatever happened, it was like 20 seconds of it actually working. It's
Yeah,
it's
very
just
quick.
all I know is it's amazing the era we live in
Yeah,
Yes.
to be
Yeah.
able to do stuff at home the way we're able to do it. It's pretty cool.
agreed.
So, well, cool. Thanks for coming to
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Arkansas
thanks, Scott.
from the lower 48. Thanks
Yeah.
for visiting, joining us in person.
It was a lot of fun.
Cool. You guys got anything else?
No.
Brian, Pete?
Nope.
No, good. Merry Christmas.
No? Yes.
Yeah,
Merry
Merry
Christmas,
Christmas, everybody.
This is the Christmas episode.
Yay.
That's right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch y'all later.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.